My parents gave the house I bought to my sister. I stopped paying the mortgage and the bank auctioned it off. I'm 28 years old, and I had been paying the mortgage on a house I bought for my parents, only to find out they gave it to my 25-year-old sister. Even worse, they didn't even bother to tell me. I've always known my parents loved my sister more than me, but I never imagined it would come to this. My parents have a toxic and deep love for my sister, but sadly, they have nothing for me. As the older of two siblings, they always had higher expectations for me, while I was instilled with a sense of responsibility from a very young age. My younger sister, Perry, was treated like a princess. Not exactly like one, because my parents don't have many resources, but she always got what she wanted. My parents never had academic expectations for her. She could explore her passions and hobbies, while I was buried in my studies. It's always been like this. My parents weren't exactly subtle about their expectations for me. They made it clear that I had to build a solid career, and I couldn't fail in my studies. After I graduated high school, my parents took out loans and spent their savings to pay for my technical school. I suggested that instead of draining their savings, they could take out a loan for my education, and I would pay it back once I found a job. My parents opposed the loan because of its high interest rates. They said I would end up paying back 1.5 times the principal, and I was too young to understand the complexities of loans. I thought if they said so, it must be right. I was only 18 at the time. Little did I know, they were saving me from the burden of a loan, only to take advantage of me later. After finishing university, I landed a good job in the tech sector. Exactly what they wanted for me. They were undoubtedly proud of me, but I always felt like some kind of commodity, as if they had invested in me expecting something in return. They never missed a chance to say, "We sacrificed so much for you. Don't forget where you come from." At first, it seemed harmless. I thought they just wanted to keep me humble. But over time, I realized it was emotional manipulation. Emotional blackmail is their specialty. As I started working, the pressure increased. Every time I visited, my dad would hint that I shouldn't forget he spent his savings to pay for my education, and how I needed to work hard to repay their sacrifices. I knew my parents needed a house. They had been saving for years, but they spent that money on my education. I remember shortly after starting my career, barely a year in, I went home for a vacation. While we were having dinner, my dad looked me straight in the eye and said, "We did our part by paying for your education. Now it's your turn. You should plan to buy a house for us soon. We can't live renting forever, right?" I felt a lump in my stomach when he said that. I knew they expected me to buy them a house, but not so soon. I hadn't even been working a year yet. I still shared an apartment with 2 roommates because I couldn't afford one on my own, and my parents were already asking me to buy them a house. What the hell? I protested. "Dad, I just started my job. I can't even afford rent for my own apartment. How do you expect me to take on such a huge financial commitment?" He said he wasn't asking for it immediately, but that he was planting the idea in my head so I could plan and work hard to make it happen. My mom chimed in with a deceptively sweet voice. "We paid for your university. Without us, you wouldn't be where you are now. Think of it as paying us back." I didn't have the heart to argue. They weren't wrong. I was where I was thanks to their sacrifices. But sometimes their sermons were too much to bear, and I wanted to scream, "Who asked you to do that for me?" But I didn't have the courage to confront them. I kept a fair distance from them and only answered their calls when it was urgent. Visiting them was out of the question after that dinner conversation. I used work as an excuse to avoid them. However, the obligation to buy them a house stayed permanently in my mind. So, after 5 years of saving and working hard, I gave in. I bought them a modest, nice house in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't extravagant, but it was comfortable. Everything seemed fine. I thought it was the least I could do for my parents after everything they had done for me. I paid the mortgage for 3 years, even paying a bit extra to clear it off early. I had other plans in life. I wanted to buy my own house, travel, start a family, etc. I couldn't keep this loan indefinitely. After buying them the house, my parents stopped bothering me about helping them. They proudly showed it off to their friends and family, boasting that their investment had paid off. It didn't bother me, but it didn't close the gap between us either. I kept my distance and didn't visit them often. 2 days ago, I decided to visit my parents after months of being caught up with work. I didn't give them a heads up. I wanted to surprise them. But there was a surprise waiting for me. When I arrived at the house, I saw Perry's car parked outside. I thought she was just visiting, and I was glad about the idea of a family reunion. Perry had gotten married and moved out when my parents were still living in the rented house. It had been years since I last saw her at her wedding. I knocked on the door, and Perry answered in her pajamas. I thought she was just visiting for a short while. We greeted each other with a hug, and then she asked, "What are you doing here?" I jokingly replied, "Could ask you the same thing." I walked in and asked, "Where are Mom and Dad?" She sat on the sofa and casually answered, "Oh, they moved." I froze. "They moved? What do you mean they moved? This is their house." Perry shrugged, as if it wasn't a big deal. "They didn't tell you? Actually, they gave it to me. Now I live here." I felt like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. "They gave you the house? The house I've been paying for?" "Yes," she said, indifferent, as if it made total sense. "Mom and Dad said I needed it more. You know, I'm planning on having a baby soon, and they thought I should have the house." I was stunned. I asked, "Where are they living now?" She answered, "They're renting an apartment across town." As if it was the most normal thing in the world, I left without saying another word, my mind filled with rage. I drove straight to their new apartment, not caring that I was showing up unannounced. When my mom opened the door, I wasted no time. "What the hell is going on? Perry just told me you gave her the house I bought, the house I've been paying for. Can you explain this to me?" My mom had the audacity to smile, as if it were no big deal. "Calm down, sweetheart. Come in. We didn't think it would bother you." I walked in but didn't bother to sit down. I wanted answers. Somehow my voice rose. "You didn't think it would bother me? You gave away the house I bought without even talking to me about it. How could you think it wasn't important for me to know?" My mom sighed, as if I was the unreasonable one. "Well, we thought that since things are going so well for you, you wouldn't mind. Perry's planning on having a baby. Don't you want your future nieces and nephews to be born in a stable home, not in a rented house where they'll grow up in an unstable environment? Now that they have the house, they won't need to worry about rent and can focus on other things, like the well-being of their child." I snapped, "I don't care where my nephews and nieces are born and raised. I don't mind if they live in a rented house. We did. I still live in a rental, and it's not my problem. Thinking about them is Perry's problem, and her husband's. If they want stability, they should get better jobs." Hearing the commotion, my dad came out of the bedroom and asked, "What's all this fuss about?" "She needs financial security. We had to give her the house. She didn't have the same opportunities you did. We didn't pay for her college, so she deserves the house." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's what parents can say, and no one challenges them. I replied, "You didn't pay for her college because she never even went to college. She dropped out of high school. Remember?" They refused to understand the gravity of what they did. They kept saying, "You're successful, you can buy another house." "Sure, I will, but it will be for me, not for you." I didn't even know how to respond. Felt like the world was crashing down on me. I couldn't understand their logic. I simply left their apartment, furious, checked into a hotel, and I've been here ever since. I honestly don't know what to do. I can't keep paying the mortgage now that I know the truth, but figuring out how to handle the situation is a real challenge. I know my parents can't pay the mortgage, and there's no doubt my sister couldn't either. This drama happened on Friday, and today is Sunday. I have my flight back on Tuesday. At first, I thought about booking a flight right away and leaving, but when I calmed down, I realized I had other things to do here. I wanted to check how much was left on the loan since I had been paying more than usual. I thought I'd paid ahead. Before my visit, I asked my dad about the mortgage balance. He said he needed to check with the bank manager. I texted him to take me to the bank tomorrow so I could get more details on the remaining balance. Update 1. There's more to this story, and I'm literally shaking as I write this. We just got back from the bank, and what I discovered left me in shock. The extra money I had been paying towards the mortgage never actually went to the bank. My dad had only been paying the actual mortgage amount and used the extra money for his own expenses, specifically to pay for the rent on his apartment. I had been living so frugally, below my means, saving just a little more and paying off the mortgage early. When the bank manager showed me the monthly deposits, I told him there must be some mistake, because we were paying nearly 1.33 times the mortgage amount. I even opened my transaction history to show how much money I had been sending to my dad every month. Then my dad intervened and said, "The manager's data is correct. We're only paying what's due on the mortgage." At first, I thought my dad was confused, that he didn't understand the situation, but then he grabbed my arm and said, "The records are correct. Let's talk about this later." I felt another blow. I was dizzy, anticipating another betrayal. I just sat there stunned while the manager finished the meeting, giving us details about the remaining mortgage balance and other options to consolidate loans, etc. I stayed silent. As soon as the manager left us alone, my dad took me aside and asked, "Why are we talking about the extra money you sent for the mortgage?" I answered, furious. "Of course, I sent it for the mortgage. What else would I send extra money for? I told you that money was for the mortgage." What he said next left me speechless. "I thought you were sending it for our expenses. I used it to pay our rent." I just stared at him, then sat down, burying my head in my hands. What do I do with my parents now? My dad sat next to me and asked me not to cause a scene, saying it wasn't a big deal. I exploded. "It's not a big deal? You made me buy you a house and then gave it to Perry without even telling me. On top of that, you used the extra mortgage money to pay your rent. Let me tell you something. My dad is not a man who stays quiet and lets his son confront him, especially not in a public place." He replied angrily, "Don't you dare raise your voice at me. You didn't do me a favor by buying us that house. I spent all my savings paying for your college. I don't need to explain to you what I do with that house. You sent the money and I paid the mortgage on time. What's the problem? If I used the extra to cover our rent, it's not like we were asking for more." I was furious with his words. The extra money was meant to pay off the mortgage early, not to finance his new apartment. I stormed out of the bank, still fuming. As I walked down the street, I could hear my dad shouting my name, but I didn't look back. I just kept walking until I reached the subway station. My mom called me 4 or 5 times and sent me a text asking me to come home so we could sit down and discuss the matter. I didn't respond. I didn't want to discuss anything. I had made my decision and I was going to do what I believed was right. No more of their toxicity. Update 2. Sorry for the spelling and grammar mistakes in my last update. I was shaking with rage, and then I had to edit it to make it readable. I also didn't answer some of the common questions I received in the comments, so let me address a few things now. Some asked if my parents are Asian. No, we're not. Let me clear that up. Asians aren't the only community whose parents push their kids to extremes. I don't want to reveal my ethnic background. Sorry. Some also asked who the loan was in the name of. Well, the loan was in my dad's name. I didn't confirm that at first because I wanted to buy a new car and maybe a house in a few years. Having this loan associated with me would have affected my future loans. So I'm glad I made that decision since it's now making it easier to execute my plan. Moving on to the next update. The next day, I went back to my normal life. A month passed, and I didn't send my dad the mortgage payment as usual. As expected, he tried to contact me on the first day of the month, only to find out that I had blocked him. Not just him, I blocked my mom, my sister, and her husband. I don't want any more drama in my life. I made my decision. I stopped paying the mortgage. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me anymore. If they wanted to give the house to Perry, then fine. Let her handle the payments. Let her be responsible for it. When my parents realized what I had done, they completely lost it. I received some calls and voice messages from unknown numbers. Maybe they used their friends' numbers, I don't know. The messages said things like, "You can't just stop paying. We don't have the money to cover the mortgage." I laughed inside. Well, that's not my problem anymore. I blocked those numbers too. But that wasn't all. 3 days later, I found my dad at the door of my house when I got back from work. He was furious and told me, "You can't just leave like that. You owe us. We paid for your college, we raised you. Who do you think you are?" I immediately replied, "I've already paid you back. Do you realize how much I've spent on that mortgage? It's more than what you paid for my tuition. I don't owe you anything." He called me ungrateful, but I cut him off, saying, "No, you can't make me feel guilty anymore. I've done enough. I'm not paying the house, the rent, or anything else. You made your decision. Now deal with the consequences." They treated me like a commodity, investing in me by sending me to college, and now they just wanted to squeeze me dry for the rest of my life. I'm not a commodity. I walked out of the hallway and drove off in my car. I didn't go into my apartment because I knew he'd follow me inside, and I wasn't ready to deal with the drama. When I came back later that night, he was gone. My mom tried calling me several times from new numbers, leaving desperate voicemail messages. Even Perry left me a long message with a different number, saying she needed the house for her future family and that I was being selfish for not helping. Selfish? I've been paying for everything while she's done nothing. I didn't give in to any of their manipulations. I'm done with them. I've cut all ties completely. Update number 3. The house was sold at auction, and Perry was forced to move out. As I mentioned before, Perry couldn't afford the mortgage, and my parents were financially drowning, paying for the rent on their apartment. They couldn't handle the mortgage, the rent, and all the household expenses. When I stopped making payments, I knew this would happen. It was just a matter of time. After almost a year, I found out the house had been sold. My parents did everything they could to save it, using their savings and cashing in their retirement money, but it wasn't enough. Things also got tense between Perry and my parents during this time. While they were struggling to pay the mortgage, they asked Perry and her husband to contribute 50%. But she refused, saying the house was a gift to her and that my parents should cover the full mortgage. That's when my parents realized the mistake they'd made. But by then, it was too late. I think my parents did the right thing by letting the bank auction and sell the house, rather than continuing to pay the mortgage and letting Perry stay there without contributing. The house was auctioned off, and my dad got back a significant amount of money, part of the down payment and the monthly payments he'd been making all these years. With that, he's more than recovered what he invested in me. I know it's my money, but I don't expect a single cent of it back. I have to let it go. At least now they can't say they did me a favor by paying for my college. I've paid them back with interest. I don't feel guilty for cutting them out of my life. From what I've heard from my cousins and uncles, my parents have moved into a smaller apartment to reduce rent costs. They've saved the money they received from the house sale for their retirement. They've been telling everyone that they don't want to rely on me when they get old and that they're working to take care of themselves. They've also cut off all financial support to Perry and told her she has to figure things out on her own with her family. Yes, she tried to manipulate them again, saying they paid for my college and secured my future, so they were obligated to secure hers. But now my parents have come back to reality and aren't giving in to her demands. Well, I'm glad for them. In the meantime, I've rented an apartment for myself. Finally, I'll have some privacy. I've also started saving to buy my own house, a place that will be mine and only mine. It's not easy to distance yourself from family, but sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who take the most advantage of you. Took me a long time to realize this, but I don't regret my decision. Family or not, I deserve better than being treated like a walking bank account. Update number 4. I've noticed that a lot of people still have questions, so I'll clarify a few points before going into what has happened recently. One of the most common questions has been how much my parents spent on my education and how much I've spent on the mortgage for the house that was supposedly for them. Well, even though I don't have the exact figures, I can tell you that my education cost around $40,000. As for the mortgage, including the extra payments I made to pay it off early, but which my parents used to pay for their apartment rent, I've paid about $52,000. As you can see, I've more than paid them back. I no longer feel that I owe them anything. Some people have also asked about Perry. I want to clarify that she didn't end up on the street, as some suggested. She and her husband are living in her in-laws' house. So no, I'm not that bad brother who left his poor sister homeless. Also, the house was never meant for her, It was for my parents. Perry and her husband could have taken over the mortgage payments, but as always, they didn't want to make the effort. The house was in my parents' name, and they were the ones who decided to give it to Perry. So they were free to pay the rest. There was nothing I could do, and certainly nothing I would have wanted to do for them. Now, for the real update, my dad came back. Looks like he has enough money for a plane ticket to visit me. Well, let me correct myself, to demand something from me, not to visit. He came to ask for more money. This time, he wants me to buy them another house after everything that happened with the first one, the one they gave to their favorite daughter. Now, they expect me to buy them another one. He told me they deserve a house because they've made so many sacrifices for us, their children. It always comes back to the university, reminding me of the great sacrifice they made to pay for my education, which of course, never fails to come up in any conversation with my parents. And, of course, he mentioned that they gave a house to their daughter, as if that wasn't the height of irony, considering the house was originally for them, not for her. According to him, they've already done their job as parents, so now they deserve their own house. I made it very clear that in no way will I buy another house for them. The money I've been saving is for a down payment on my own house, not to solve their problems. Once again, I told them that their opportunity to have a house was wasted when they decided to give it to Perry. They should go ask her to buy them one now. I'd love to see what kind of response they'd get from her. My dad stayed in the city for a few more days and asked me to think about it and that we could talk again. However, I had a work trip those days, so I didn't talk to him again. Or rather, he couldn't talk to me because I blocked his numbers. He hasn't been able to reach me. When I returned to my apartment after the trip, he was gone, and I haven't heard from him since. As for me, I'm about to reach my savings goal for a down payment on a house. I'm very close, and if everything goes well, the next time I write here, I hope to share the news that I'll finally be a homeowner of a modest place I can call home. Update number 5. Here I am to tell you that I've been able to buy my own house. I still have work to do, like buying furniture and other things, but I finally have a roof over my head that I can call mine. I read all your comments and advice, and as many of you suggested, I haven't told anyone, not even posted it on social media. I've only told a small group of friends who have no connection to my parents or family. They are friends I've made here in this city, so there's no way this news can reach my parents. I don't want to risk them doing what I've read in other posts, like asking me for the house to give it to my pregnant sister or something like that. So, I'm being extremely careful with this information. I don't want to end up in a mama bear situation where they ask for the house for the sake of the family. I joke, saying I'd even like to have an electric fence around the house to keep the entitled parents away. But honestly, I've learned from Reddit that the best thing is to keep this information secret, at least until I can set solid boundaries. Now, instead of advice on how to deal with parents like this, I'm here asking for advice on something more enjoyable: decorating my new home. If there's one thing I'm not good at, it's decorating. When I lived with roommates, there was always someone else in charge of that, and when I moved into a rented place, it was already furnished, so I never had to worry too much. But now that I have this empty space, a blank canvas, I feel a bit intimidated. I don't want to ruin it and turn it into a place with no personality or bad taste.